I don't think Jessica Vaughn is here.
Not yet. Her plane got held up.
So I've come to know Jessica pretty well over the years, and I could just say I'm sorry she's not here, but she is just she knows more about immigration than anybody I have ever talked to. She's a great resource. And maybe the smartest thing she ever said was to tell me to keep my remarks brief today. So we can all thank her for that. I wanted to actually talk about one of the stories that you mentioned about secure communities. Excuse me. First, I do want to acknowledge one of my colleagues, Kathy Curran at WCVB Channel 5. She's done quite a bit of work. She's another reporter on especially the story about, we call them identity imposters, who assume identities and get Massachusetts driver's license. I worked with her for 2 years on that topic, just story after story on how the Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles gives driver's license to people in under assumed identities. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned her.
That'll be next year.
Next year. I did want to talk a little bit about that secure community story because I think it's illustrative of some of the issues that certainly journalists face, whether it be about immigration or really any other topic. And as Mark mentioned, I'm not an immigration beat reporter, and we cover all kinds of stories. But this one about secure communities was, I thought, very illustrative of the problem that we encounter that comes from either the lack of information or the closed nature of sources of information. So that story started with a tip, as they often do, that there was this program that I'd never heard of called Secure Communities, and it was basically a data transfer program, transferring fingerprint data from local police departments that when they book somebody, and it was a sort of pipeline for these fingerprints to reach immigration databases. So as simple as that, it was also immensely complex because of the immigration debate that followed and the concern that it was turning local police into immigration agents, a debate I'm sure most of you anyway are familiar with. So we started asking around, and we were met with weeks of really silence. ICE, nothing. The governor's office, nothing. And we thought our information was wrong until after several weeks of persistence, we finally got some information from ICE. We had an interview with ICE, and ICE was at the time looking for memorandum of understanding with states to sort of flick the switch for this program. And Massachusetts was essentially ignoring it. Not essentially, they were ignoring it. And that was our story. Once that night the story broke, the opponent of the governor called a press conference for the next day. He had a former U.S. attorney by his side. He's running for governor. He called a press conference. He said, we need to get this program. There were public forums that followed, all kinds of discussion, all kinds of debate. Some of it very heated, some of it inaccurate, no question about it. But the point being, the debate started. And until then, until the information came out, nobody even knew about it. And I think one of the biggest issues facing journalism, along with everything that you mentioned, shrinking budgets and tight deadlines and so on and so forth, the challenges that we are facing on top of all that is sometimes penetrating the incredibly closed nature of our state governments, our local governments, sometimes the federal government. And certainly immigration is no different than any other topic in that regard. So that's all the remarks I have. Thank you, Mark, for inviting me, and back to you.
Thank you, Kevin.